Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Scientists are in agreement that excess phosphorus from a variety of sources impairs the quality of Lake Champlain. To help reduce phosphorus, UVM Extension and the Agency of Agriculture are working directly with landowners and farmers across the state, offering educational workshops and on-site visits. As part of today's program, we'll discuss the regulations related to accepted agricultural practices on small farms. But first, we're going to learn about some of the work that UVM Extension is doing to help livestock and horse owners identify problems and solutions when it comes to land and animal stewardship. Joining me is Extension Equine Specialist Betsy Green. Great to have you on the program again.
Great to be back.
And you have a couple of things to share with us, and they both connect to the efforts to reduce phosphorus in Lake Champlain. And let's start with the workshop that you're offering.
Yeah, sure, Judy. For the last several years, we've been offering this, putting together a land management, pasture management, good stewardship, and of course, horse and livestock management workshop in the fall. It's been underwritten strongly by the Risk Management Agency, and it works to try and just get people thinking about possibilities. Because one thing that, as we go through and say, here, this is the gold standard of care and stewardship, people look at it and see that as unattainable. And, you know, perfection is paralyzing type of thing.
Or expensive.
Or very expensive. And so for me, if I can get them to be looking at it with different eyes, saying, what small changes can I make? Because many of those small changes will make a big difference. And that's both for their horses and, or livestock, and their land and stewardship as well.
And so who did you involve in the workshops?
Well, this past year, if you recall, we had all of the press from, you know, all types of press covering how the small farms were contributing strongly to the poison and pollution of Lake Champlain. Mm-hmm. And one of the folks involved in monitoring and educating the farms involved is John Roberts from the Agency of Ag. And so I like to bring those folks together with the people that are working that have to address these issues, so that we can get some dialogue instead of the he said, she said. Right. And of course, I also brought in Dr. Carrie Williams from Rutgers. She's been here a couple times before. And one reason is because she and her colleagues at Rutgers have done a lot of work and research on stewardship and on their farm, because they have situations that are not ideal, and they've been working to improve those and share that information.
So you brought a video clip from the workshop at Arbrook Farm. Give the viewers a quick introduction.
Sure. John and Alice Burgoyne have been running this place, a small operation, for several years, and they have a unique land situation like many of us do. And they've done a lot of things to make it work for their horses and, in the process, land stewardship. And he just talks a little bit about some of the issues in this first clip.
Okay.
You know, we could either do paired turnout or single turnout, because they're competition horses. We really are a little bit careful about doing group turnout.
Yeah.
Because we've just had too many friends have horses hurt in the paddocks with just fooling around.
Yeah.
Because they all wear 4 shoes, and they all, you know, they all do stupid stuff. So we have to be careful, and we have to be careful for the owner's horses.
And they're fit
and they're very fit.
Very fit.
So, you know, that we had to sort of had enough space to be able to do that. Being in Addison County, we have a lot of clay soil, lovely. And so, because we're on a hillside, the water drains down in the spring, settles at the bottom of some of these paddocks. We have to stop turning out because it's too deep, too muddy. We now have a container system for the manure, which gets composted across the way with a guy who does a lot of land work and site work and all that kind of stuff. So that gets taken away once a month. And that's worked out pretty well for us.
You guys pick out the paddocks? They look really clean.
Somewhat, periodically, not very often. I mean, what I do is I brush hog them very low, and so it just sort of spreads everything out, you know, because I try to stay on top of the weeds as well as best I can, and stuff. So I put my brush hog quite low and just let it just low.
Kill two birds with one
Right,
stone.
exactly. So we ended up, by having the indoor, we gained a little bit more land, actually, just by getting that work cleared out and stuff. And that has all now has really good drainage and stuff. And then part of the land that we owned is actually wetland, which we fenced out so horses aren't allowed to get in there anymore. It's all fenced separately. So there's a piece of wetland that goes between their property on the other side that separates our properties, and it goes all the way down through. And Mike has fenced his off as well, so that the people who keep cows there, that the cows can't get into that, and our horses can't get into the piece up here. So we've been pretty conscientious about doing that kind of stuff and being careful. But I'm sure there's more we can do, and I'm more than willing to learn.
Well, it sounds like this farm has done a lot of work.
Yeah, they had a great opportunity. In fact, when I first went out there, I was going out to evaluate the facility because they were nominated for the Vermont Farm Bureau Horse Farm of Distinction. And I went out there and I talked to Alice Burgoyne and walked all the way around, and I looked and I said, okay, clearly they meet these standards, and they have been awarded that for 2014. But I also said, would you be interested in running a workshop out here? Because there's so many great examples of the things that you can do.
And you have another clip from one of the workshops.
Yeah, in fact, the next clips we have myself talking about the high traffic areas, some things that they might consider doing, and then also Carrie Williams talking about some of the same parallel issues at Rutgers too.
Okay.
One thing on the high traffic, like for example, this would be parallel universe to UVM's gates. It's at the bottom of the hill. That's where the horses hang out. You have a water source and hay because you're not having enough grass. When we decided how to put in our high traffic, we had, I think it's 15 feet wide is the rolls of the tarp. And so we actually said, okay, if we put it 15 feet in front of those paddock gates along that front where they're hanging by the barn anyway, we can walk in, turn the horse around, turn them loose, and be out of mud. So have we solved all of our problems? No, but we've made a huge difference, both for the horses and for the people. And that's, you know, and for the water too, because, and we had a pipe that went from the lowest point kind of in the end of that sandwich, so that it gave the water that was coming into the air pockets between the rock a place to go, and it went across our travel lane into a buffer between the barn, and we put rock in a hole at the end of the pipe to give some room for dispersal of that water as it comes in.
Yeah, very similar to what UVM has done. Rutgers had a lot of the same problems that no one addressed. They had too much water in their paddocks, no good gutter system or drainage system around the barn, very, very wet, muddy paddocks. So very similar to the French drains and the drainage system like you see here. We did that around all of our paddocks so that the water would go into the ground, actually perforate, because horses make very, very compacted soils. So we had very compacted paddocks. So we diverted the water underneath the paddock and out through a buffer system. And that's what is great. The minute we pulled in here, I noticed the farm has great buffers. I mean, all of this grass here, all of the grass there, all of this is a really nice buffer system, because as the water hits the paddock and drains over the surface, once it reaches where the horses are not, the grasses are going to pick up some of the nutrients. They're going to pick up the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and things like that before it washes away into the wetlands that you were talking about.
Well, joining us now is John Roberts of the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. Thanks so much for being with us. Now, what is your role when it comes to the issue of small farm stewardship?
I was hired as the small farm water quality specialist or coordinator for the Agency of Ag, and my role presently is particularly focused in Franklin County, but is to identify and interview all small farms, and this is any farm which in the case of dairy is less than 200 milking cows or equivalent numbers of horses, beef, goats, sheep, or llamas. But it can also go down to anybody who doesn't actually fit the definition of a farm. A definition of a farm is 4 horses or 5 cows. But if you have 1 horse or 1 sheep, we certainly aren't going to chase 1 chicken. But if you have one small animal who is causing a pollution problem, or their manure is causing a pollution problem, or their pasture is so denuded of vegetation that in a heavy rain you get soil wash off, then you come under the auspices of the AAPs, the Accepted Ag Practices, which are the basic environmental rules of the state of Vermont.
And so it's not as much, I mean, it's just as important to consider not only how many animals or what animals you have, but the land itself, the topography.
Exactly, yes.
And so is this compliance only for businesses?
No, and I have surprised some people.
I bet.
When I've stopped by and said, can we talk about what you're doing with your horses or manure? I mean, it's quite often horses and beef cows, actually, I think, are the most predominant ones I see who are not farmers per se, and that they're not earning their living from farming. They have a off the land job, but they have some beef and some horses that can be managed easily. And so those are the ones that I'm seeing most of.
Are these strictly people who live near the lake?
Oh, no. No, they're all over the state. I mean, everybody, if you've bought a piece of land, 10 acres or more, you've got probably 9 acres that there isn't any building on. And if you want to keep it open, there is nothing better than a grazing animal to do that. And you have the advantage of either the pleasure of riding that animal or raising some beef or sheep or whatever, raising some meat. And using that land to do that.
And it sounds like what you find, though, is mostly people aren't trying to do a bad thing for the environment. They're just not aware of some of the things that they should be doing differently.
I think that's very true, Judy. I think a lot of people don't realize, quite what a problem manure can be if it is not managed properly. We have, I brought 2 documents with me, the Accepted Ag Practices, which is this is the sort of legal document, I would say, and they've been around for 20 years now or more. They were updated in 2006, and they will probably be updated again. And then I have a more sort of picturesque, diagrammatic version that shows, specific distances of where things should or should not happen. And, so part of my job, or a very important part of my job, is education. I'm not trying to catch people out. I do not go around with a ticket book writing fines.
But that's something you could do.
Actually, no. What the process is, if I see what I consider a violation, I write a report, which is very detailed, and has photographs, has maps, and I submit that report to my superior and my compliance officer in the agency. They make the decision as to whether what I saw was a violation. And then what usually happens is if the landowner has no prior problems, has not had issues in the past, they will basically issue a corrective action letter, which is basically saying, we believe you have violated this section of the statute, and please let us know. It's a little more severe than just please, but let us know within 30 days that how you're going to correct the problem.
We've got about a minute left. What's the most common problem that you see for smaller farms?
I would say just issues of manure being stacked too close to property lines, and production areas, which are anywhere where you have livestock, not being properly buffered from runoff getting into water systems.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or to find out more about these issues?
That would be through the agency website, and I'm just so I remember it exactly. The phone number is 802-828-2430, or our website, which is www.agriculture.vermont.gov, and through that number or that website they can find me. I am not hard to find.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for joining us today.
A pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank
Betsy.
you.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.